figure out how to respond to an incident. Our friends at NIST did a great job of putting us in a position to be able to at least understand what the typical incident looks like, and be able to hopefully respond to it accordingly. However, I can tell you just based off of experience that no two incidents are alike, and as much as we prepare for it, I mentioned earlier on in the week, everybody's got a great idea, great plan until you get punched in the teeth. But it doesn't mean that you have to stop preparing for it, right? And we prepare, we detect, we analyze, then we try to contain it, eradicate it, and recover, and finally figure out like a hot wash or lessons learned. Great chance that the order here, the order of this, you'll see at least one question on your exam for just the order of this. And just remember, you have to prepare, always be prepared like a Boy Scout to be able to detect and analyze and then contain, eradicate, and recover, and then the post-incident activity. So you'll see one question on just these phases for your exam. And again, I'm going to make these videos available. You can go back and take a look at them. In the prep phase, or the preparation phase, that's when we can go in and try to figure out ways where we can be on the ready. And we do that by making sure that we at least try to do our due diligence with vulnerability scans, practicing what we preach as far as protecting the infrastructure, the assets that are here, all the while trying to also figure out how we can continually do a good job and make sure that we're prepared just in case bad things happen. So, discovering, reporting, confirming that we have the people that are trained on how to do it, being able to investigate, and then ultimately recover from the incidents is super important. Who are some of those people? Well, we talked about that before. For purposes of your exam, they call them the first responders or incident response teams. A lot of times in practice, we actually call it the Tiger team. And that's kind of like the A team, if you will, of people. We talked about that earlier on the week. And so it goes from, the prep phase to the detection and analysis phase. And, from there, that idea is that there's a sign that happens, and then there's these things that are called a precursor, that a sign that the incident may occur in the future, and then the indicators where it may have occurred or it may be occurring right now. And so the question is when do you hit that button that says, hey, we're under attack, or hey, we've been under attack? And the idea is you've been prepared, and the idea to if you are prepared, you can detect and begin to analyze accordingly. Some of those that you see here are different types of categorization systems. One is the on the left-hand side, the DoD cyber incident category. So this is anything dealing with the .mil, and then here is the CERT, computer emergency response. How to do that specifically. So usually we don't see either one of these like categorically on the exam. This is just more for your own personal enrichment. In addition, in the detection and analysis phase, sometimes we'll see these things called denial of service. And we've kind of loosely talked about that throughout the week. But But essentially, this is an attack on the A of the triad, right? The availability of the triad. And based on how large it is, it can be either a DOS or a DDoS. And there's a few different types of attacks that are listed right here with that. So you may have heard of some of these before, but if not, then that's okay. In the detection phase, you probably should have some sort of egress monitoring, where anything that is being transmitted outside of the internal network is being scrutinized in some way. That if it's unauthorized movement of data, we want to make sure that it never leaves the network. And so having that egress monitoring is super helpful, because then you can just turn it off and say, nope, nothing's leaving. What you don't want to do is shut off the machine, at least not right at the initialization of an event. The last thing here in the detection and analysis phase is, here's the word again. You remember I talked about the birds earlier on in the week, and the idea or the notion of a clipping level. And so that can also be for passwords. We talked about like a threshold earlier. And here we're seeing it again with intrusion detection systems, where there's a predefined number of activities that happen before things start to go absolutely berserk. And because of that, if it is outside of that normal operations, you can definitely start to see some patterns, and then alerts will be made. So once you've detected it, then we need to try to contain it with the intent that we can get rid of it and then recover from it. So let's talk about that. So we want to try to make sure that our resources are protected, that any evidence that we collect is preserved. We have to make sure that our primary critical stuff is available, and who are going to be our Tiger team that can help us in this particular case, and then how long is it going to take us to possibly recover from the incident. Sometimes it's very simple, and then other times it's super difficult. So all the while during this containment, eradication, and recovery phase, we're trying to make sure that anything that we collect can hold up as evidence. We need to make sure we have this thing called chain of custody. And if you've watched Law and Order or any of those crime shows or any movies, or maybe you stayed at a Holiday Inn last night, you would definitely know that chain of custody is something that's super important, because as you're collecting this stuff, you want to make sure that it can you can preserve it so it can still be best evidence. And with that, the collection, eradication, and recovery phase, we want to make sure that the forensic analysis is intact as well. So we collect the media, we dig into the data, we're able to retrieve the files from there, we plow through the information, and then we figure out what can be reported as evidence in this process for digital forensics. In addition to that, there's certain types of evidence that you may already know about, and if not, then we have to figure out what is admissible in court. And so if something is a criminal activity, it's likely that you will be asked to provide evidence so they can prosecute a crime, and you as the engineer have to make sure that you can help prove that individual's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. And so there's an idea or the notion of what's admissible. So in order for it to be admissible, it has to be relevant, it must be material or related, and it has to be competent. So those are the three things that are important for things to be admissible. So check it out. If you have the sufficient evidence, it must be convincing. Competent evidence, it's got to be legally qualified and reliable. And then relevant evidence, it's got to be applicable. And so what does that mean? And why is that important? Well, with evidence, it can be either best evidence, which you see right up top here, and that's when a document's used in court, you have the original document versus a copied document. Why would that be important to be considered best evidence? If you have an original copy versus a copied, why would it be? Would that be important? Anybody? Yeah. If it's a copy, the copy could be modified. Absolutely. It's called secondary evidence at that point. Yeah. They may not actually represent the data fully. Yeah, I like that. Typically, the copy is known as secondary evidence, and it's not accepted as evidence because you don't know, why it is evidence. And that's important because as we go through, there's a whole bunch of things that are admissible and things that are not admissible. Some different things that you can, or that, trial attorneys can get excluded. If there's violations in the way that the evidence was collected, they can file a motion and get it excluded. If there's an illegal search and seizure, that means that your Fourth Amendment was violated. And then if there's a violation in the Electronic Communications Privacy Act where, for whatever reason, somebody was eavesdropping and, you can file a motion, or your attorney can file a motion to suppress that wiretap and eavesdrop and get it excluded from the actual evidence. The last thing here that I want to talk about is this hearsay. And that is secondhand evidence, usually digital evidence is considered hearsay. Why? Why would that be considered hearsay? Yeah, it absolutely can be manipulated, right? And so we want to make sure that if we're presenting evidence, that any of the log files are authenticated and have non-repudiation intact, but it still might be considered secondhand evidence and be a hearsay exception in that case.